Welcome to Beyond Sunday at Seymour Heights, a podcast created to go beyond the Sunday service experience, exploring some of the deeper questions of our faith and offering additional content from behind the scenes. Now, 2024 marks Seymour Heights' 50th anniversary. And as we approach October, we plan to introduce you to different church members that have been here along the way. So today, I'm excited to introduce you to Ben and Carla Lutz. Welcome to Beyond Sunday at Seymour Heights.
Hello,
Thank
Adam.
you. Good
Hello,
to be here.
church.
Yeah. So we're going to ask a series of questions. And the first one here is, you and I, we've known each other for a long time, right? And sometimes I take that for granted. We actually were neighbors for a little while and could holler across the little valley there. But not everybody here at Seymour Heights knows you all that well. And so maybe take a minute to let the church family know your beginning, your history here at Seymour Heights.
Well, I'll start. I've actually, my family was actually one of the families that helped start Seymour back in 1974 when I was 8. So I've seen the church grow and change and to where we are today. And I met Carla in college, and we moved away for a while. When we came back, we came right back here and picked up where we left off. So it's been 30 years since that point in time. So
it's crazy. I was thinking about this as we were preparing just to talk to you guys. Like, I still picture like Ben and Carla with the kids, right? With Brittany and the rest of them were just running around. And so we also moved away for a while and came back. And it's hard sometimes because that time passed. You're like 4 to 8 years ago, and then you look and you're like, you have grandkids that are older than 8, right?
Yes.
So it's like, oh, this is different. But if I could jump in for a second too with you, Ben, as we look at the history of the church, what's some of the things you remember from the beginning? I know we didn't start here in the building we're in currently, of course, and even what we call now the youth room, which was now we would call the old sanctuary, I guess. That wasn't even the first sanctuary.
No.
So what do you
actually, it
remember?
I remember a white horse barn.
Okay.
That when they bought the property, we started in a bank, meeting in a bank. In fact, my classroom, there was only 2 in my class, and we were in the closet. So Carol Vosding was my teacher.
Oh, yeah.
And but when we bought the property, we took the horse barn and converted it into the first sanctuary.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was a neat experience. And then it just kept adding and adding and adding.
Yeah, in the most recent phase of the building that most people would consider the church building is the 2010, 12, somewhere around there. And that was a big project because that was the office space, the gym, the sanctuary. It was like a big chunk of
tore
of
down
maintenance
some of
project.
the old,
Yeah. So, that's interesting, And so this, you guys met at Johnson, right?
Yeah.
And so you met at college, and this was like first year, like freshman love, or what did that look like?
It was his freshman year. It was my sophomore year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the freshmen were coming in, and you're like, ooh, I need to talk to him.
Actually, it was the other way around. Of course, we used to have registration in the gym, so I saw her in the gym, and something told me that's the woman you're going to marry, and I got my courage up to go say hi to her and introduce myself, and eventually asked her out, and I won her over eventually. So.
That's awesome. You and I share something in common too, that you grew up as a kid on the campus, and so you kind of had the run of the place. But then to transition into being a student there is a little bit different too. But that's fun, meeting on campus and then just being brave enough to step out. That's always the hardest part, right? So,
but she was worth it.
Oh,
And we met and were married within 9 months.
Okay, yeah, that's I think the story resonates with me too because my parents were similar, right? They were a quick turnaround. I think Dad sending postcards out to a couple girls is the story he tells. I don't know if that's really true or not, but yeah. Now, so you guys have been married now for how many years?
It's our 40th wedding anniversary.
In May,
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. So as we think about marriage, so 40 years, you guys have had a lot of stories, I'm sure. And so this past week, Harold talked about marriage termites, and that sounds like a funny title, I know. So if you've not checked it out, we would encourage you to go and check out the sermons. Of course, we're in a series. It's complicated because life is complicated, relationships are definitely complicated, and so as we think about marriage termites, marriage isn't easy. So would you guys be willing to tell us maybe some of those times where you had a difficult time and just how God showed up?
Well, yeah, we were talking about how in the early years of marriage are a lot of times the most difficult, where you're trying to get, learning about each other, and so we did our first year of marriage here at Johnson, and then we were going to move to Tulsa, Oklahoma, for him to continue going to school there. So there was a lot of stress.
It's a big decision.
It was.
Yeah.
And so we got all ready to go, and all of a sudden, a student come up to us, and he says, "Hey, I know a couple in Tulsa." He said, "And I need a ride." He said, "Could you give me a ride out there, and I'll introduce you to this couple?" And we were like, "Sure." So he rode out there with us, and
we didn't know anybody.
We didn't know anybody. We had no job. We had no place to live. We knew nothing. We were just going. And he introduced us to this couple, and this couple just took us in and loved on us. And they took us to their church, and the church loved on us. And it was just turned out to be the biggest blessing that we would never have thought to pray for anything like that. It was like the Lord just showed up and just took care of.
He knew what you needed.
He did. He did. And that was a wonderful blessing. And then when we were
there 9 years.
Yeah, we were there 9 years. I loved it. I loved the people there, and
Yours is a lot of relationships you built too.
Yes, and I was settled. I was like, this is where we're going to live. I had no plans to move.
Yeah.
And then Ben felt.
Yeah, we got a phone call.
Yeah.
God called kind of a career change to come back and actually work at Johnson.
Yeah.
And I was excited. It's something that I had thought about and prayed about a lot. So I was ready to go.
Yeah. And I was not.
And she wasn't.
And that took lots of prayer.
Yeah.
But finally, the Lord gave me a peace about that. And so I've never regretted coming. We've been so blessed to be here. So yeah.
It's definitely hard. You said like the first part of marriage and like just getting used to each other, and they don't clean up as good as you like to clean up, or they make food different than you do, or just whatever, right? But it's a life change too. My wife and I can relate to that, of being here with family, and it's nice and comfortable, and you're like, okay, God, are you really calling us to do this? And then to move away from family, that's hard, especially as a new couple, and as you're looking at kids and all of that too. Yeah. You're not from Tulsa, right?
No.
Originally, and so it's like nobody's there.
Yeah.
We had the blessing of people that we call our adopted grandparents, right? And so that made the biggest difference in us feeling connected, our girls feeling connected. And so it's great to it's great to hear how God showed up for you in that too.
And you learn how to lean on the Lord because you don't have that family structure there. So that's a big thing of growing closer, leaving and cleaving. So.
Right. If I could just stretch a little bit too, what that you learned here at Seymour Heights, as far as the church body, were you looking for there? So when you got to Tulsa, of course, you had the school that you were going for. And was it the family that kind of brought you to church, or was it something you were looking for in a church?
The family brought us to the church, and we loved it. So we didn't even really think to go anywhere else because... Yeah.
And so that goes back to the fact that relationships are huge, right?
Yes.
There's so many people that we see come in our doors on the regular basis that are moving from all kinds of places.
Right.
And that's one of the things we hear from them is that Seymour Heights is just so welcoming, right? That they feel welcome the second they come in. But I'll say even further then, it's us in our neighborhoods making those connections and then inviting them back here to the church.
Yes.
And so thank you for sharing that. That's exciting. one of our goals with the podcast that we talk about is getting people in God's Word, right? To listen to the living Word and how it can really make an impact on our daily lives, right? We believe that here, and we want everybody that's watching this to believe that and to experience that. And you guys have already shared a story of how you've experienced that. But have there been verses or Bible stories that have stood out to you all just along your life, from single to married and now to grandparents?
Well, I think one of the scriptures that we've kind of used in our marriage and kind of all along the way was 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7, saying, "Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always persevere. Love never fails." And I think that's kind of what we've always tried to strive to do in our marriage and in our family. And
yeah, and love looks different sometimes too. You know, as you have, as you shared earlier, Ben, that original attraction love, right? Like, ooh, this is something we need to explore, God. You know, and then into tough times. And that really strengthen your love, right? Marriage is not like a one-trick thing. It's a work in progress, right? You continue loving each other and loving God, and you grow closer together. But then you throw in the mix having a kid, and you're like, okay, God, I didn't know that I could even love this much, Right. And then I don't know yet, but what grandkids are like, it's a whole different opportunity to have kids again.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, it's a blast.
Yeah. So, I think that's it's a solid verse. If you've not read it in a while, definitely check out that section, the whole chapter of 1 Corinthians 13. It's just a reminder for us how to live our lives, not only with our family, like you shared, but with each other, right? We want to honor others.
I think as we've shared about some of the stretching God did by taking us to a place unknown, there's a verse that I've always just remembered. Every time I see my alarm clock, it says 6:33. I have to repeat that verse, and it's Matthew 6:33, and that's where Jesus is talking about us, teaching us not to worry about things, about what we're going to eat, what we're going to drink, what we're going to wear. And then he says in this verse, in verse 33, he says we should seek Him and His righteousness, and as long as we do that, all these other things will be given to us as we need them, because He knows our needs, and so that's just been something that's really I've lived by a lot.
It's a powerful one, right? And that's a passage that a lot of people can relate to and really need to hear. So I appreciate you sharing that one too. That we don't have to worry about it. Yeah. God's got it. And that's what He promises. He doesn't promise life's going to be easy.
No. In fact, He says, don't worry about today because it has enough trouble of its own.
Right.
Or don't worry about tomorrow because today has enough trouble of its own. So He'll take care of those things.
Yeah. And have you found that having that verse to kind of live by too, just as you start out your day, as you start out your week, just kind of allows yourself to reset a little bit?
Yeah.
That's
a good reminder of He's there.
And especially if you wake up early and you see that 6:33 a.m.
And I do a lot. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually appreciate you sharing that too, because it's one of the things for me. There's a couple different times that if I just happen to catch the clock at the right time, I'll drop a prayer for that ever group or person as well. And so that's a powerful tool. You're around technology.
Now you're going to see 6:33 a lot.
I'm going to think about Matthew 6:33 now. So that's good. Yeah. So the last question I've got for you guys is geared towards the group that's watching here, and maybe. This could be for your kid, this could be for others, but what's some advice that you guys have, specifically thinking about marriage? We're in the month of February, it's the love month, right? We're in this series and we're talking about marriages, and so what is that, what's that piece of advice that you think you'd share with somebody?
Go ahead. I'll share after you.
Well, I would say put God first in everything, and put your spouse above yourself and put their needs first. And pray for each other daily. Just seek the Lord together. And
That's powerful.
Yeah. And she's my rock in helping me. She loves to read, watch things, and then she's sharing what she's learned about marriage or raising kids, and she's done that from day one. And so I read this, you need to read that. And so learning, and marriage takes work.
Yeah.
And so having a good marriage means educating yourself, learning how each other thinks, and how we're made different, and how we complement each other. So, and probably for me, some advice. Another verse that I really think a lot about. I better read this one though, because it's Ephesians 5, and Paul's talking about how we should live our lives.
Okay.
And he says that we should submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. And then he starts talking about what that means in marriage. And of course, we know that he talks about wives and how they should submit to their husbands. But the one that really comes home to me is verse 25, where he says, "Husbands, you should love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, to make her holy, cleansing her by washing with water through the word, and to present her to himself as a radiant church, without stain or wrinkle or any other blemish, but holy and blameless. In the same way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies." And the other translations use the word, "Husbands, cherish your wives." And that word cherish is what really sticks out to me. If I cherish something, I'm going to nurture it, do everything I can to love it, to take care of it. And that means there's no room for pride, no room for myself. It's giving up of myself for her. And so that's something that I've always tried to encourage others who are newly married or growing in their faith as a couple.
Yeah.
And I'll brag on him a minute, because when he comes home from work, he doesn't go and sit down and watch TV and relax. He finds out what I need, and if I need help making supper or I need help with the kids, he will go and play with the kids, help me with supper, whatever I need. And so he always encourages me by, always pitching in and I don't have to ask. He just sees what needs to be done and just helps.
And you were saying a little bit, it comes with time, like getting to know how the other person, responds or what their needs are too. But even in the practical side of that, like you're saying, is like he's just asking, hey, I don't know what today's look like for you. So what can I do to help? Yeah. And so it's a great example. I think both of you, provide a great example for people that are just, started out in marriage and what that can look like. And so I appreciate you being willing to join us and share some of that with us. I know sometimes coming into a space like this can be a little bit uncomfortable. So I do appreciate you guys doing that and getting a chance for the whole church to know you just a little bit better. So that's good. As we close out the episode today, I hope you've been encouraged by our conversation. Remember that no matter where you find yourself today, that God loves you and He's looking to have a relationship with you. And has been shared too. Don't worry about today or tomorrow, because it's got enough to worry about, but God's going to take care of you along that journey. You may also know someone that would be fun to interview here on the podcast as we approach our 50th anniversary. And so if you do, feel free to reach out, adam@seymourheights.org, and I'll reach out to them. In the meantime, though, we hope to see you at church, whether it's on Thursday or on Sunday mornings. Until next time.